The year is 2054.
FBI, open up!
You have just been picked up by a police squad and are sitting in the back of a van with a dark hood over your head. Panic sets in as you try to figure out what is happening. You ask yourself what you did, but there is no answer. After a while, the van stops. A pair of hands grabs you by the coat and pulls you outside into the cold night air.
Hands up! Stop resisting!
You are then led down a few steps and brought into a building. Inside, a police robot removes the hood and takes several pictures of you. After that, your belongings are taken away. In exchange, you receive a blanket and a set of prison clothes. You try to ask questions, but nobody is there to respond. You spend the night in a cell. The next morning, a set of papers arrive. A random drone picked up your dissident thoughts when you went shopping last Tuesday. You have been arrested for the crime of thinking bad thoughts about the current Secretary of the Treasury. Your sentence is 20 years in isolation. Your right to remain silent is officially dead. You've spent your entire life believing that the inside of your skull is the ultimate fortress, the only place on Earth where you can be truly and completely alone. But wouldn't you know it, they are starting to knock even that down. It's actually not as private as you think it is. In fact, you've just been lucky that the technology to tune into your neural frequency didn't exist yet. The signal has always been there, broadcasting into the dark, and your brain is the radio tower. For 100,000 years or more, humans have been trapped by a simple biological bottleneck called language. Think about it. You have a universe of complex emotions and ideas swirling inside you. But to share them, you have to squeeze all that electricity through a tiny straw of vibrating air. You move your tongue and your lips just right to make a sound. It really is a slow and clunky way to communicate. It's like trying to download a high-definition movie over a dial-up modem. It will take forever, and in the end, most of the data gets lost in the transfer. We have lived in a state of perpetual misunderstanding because we are limited by the speed of our own meat. But that barrier is breaking. Consider Kenneth. For years, he was a prisoner in his own body because he has ALS. He had all the thoughts, but the wires between his brain and his muscles were essentially useless, making him a ghost in a machine that refused to move. It looks like something straight out of the movie Upgrade, where a chip called STEM is used to bypass a broken spine. But in Kenneth's case, the chip was implanted into his motor cortex to bypass his nerves entirely. To understand how this works, imagine your brain is a massive, bustling stadium at night. Every time you think about moving your hand or saying a word, thousands of people in that stadium stand up and cheer. For Kenneth, the stadium was still full of people cheering, but the speakers were broken. The world outside couldn't hear a thing. Neuralink's N1 chip is essentially a team of 64 tiny, flexible threads, each thinner than a human hair, placed right in the middle of that crowd, listening to the specific rhythm of the cheers. When Kenneth thought about speaking, the chip caught the pattern. It then turned his thoughts into his own voice, producing the actual acoustic signature of the man he was before the disease took his breath. He was speaking to his wife using nothing but his intent. The internal world and the external world finally shook hands. The miracle for Kenneth was about regaining his voice. But for Alex, the second participant, the chip became something else entirely. A power tool for the mind. Alex started designing 3D parts in CAD software and playing high-speed shooters like Counter-Strike using nothing but his intent. Think about how you normally interact with a computer, moving your clumsy fingers across a keyboard or dragging a plastic mouse across a pad. It is a slow, mechanical translation of what you want to happen. For Alex, that middleman is dead. To understand this, imagine you are playing a game of catch. Normally, you have to coordinate your eyes and your arm. But imagine if the ball just moved because you wanted it to. You just will the outcome. Now think about what this could do to the concept of learning. Think about the years you might spend trying to master a second language like French or Mandarin. You are essentially training your brain to map concepts to brand new sets of sounds. It is a brutal uphill climb. But if a chip is reading your intent, the raw thought before it ever becomes a word, the computer can simply grab that meaning and output it in any language on the fly. The computer becomes a universal intent-to-speech engine. You think in English, but the person across from you hears perfect Japanese. The machine does the heavy lifting at the speed of light. In this world, why would a child ever spend a decade learning the grammar of a foreign tongue? The struggle of communication, the force that builds culture and patience, disappears. But why stop at humans? Think about the dog sitting at your feet. You spend your entire life guessing what that tail wag or that specific tilt of the head actually means, looking at a biological black box. But if the chip can map the electrical shout of a human brain, it can and eventually will map the whisper of a canine one. We're talking about a bridge to every living thing with a central nervous system. You could finally decode the raw and wordless intent of a creature that has never used a single vowel. The great silence will end for the entire planet. You will even be able to talk to the woods. It is the ultimate expansion of the self, but it also means that nothing in nature is truly private anymore. Every bark, chirp, and neural spark becomes a data point for the machine to harvest. We are looking at a future where knowing a language is as obsolete as knowing how to shoe a horse. You just broadcast the meaning and are done with it. But at what cost? When you stop having to work for your words, you start losing the boundary between where your mind ends and the machine begins. Alex is already designing physical objects in a virtual space by just picturing them. He is thinking things into existence. It might feel like magic, but it is actually a total surrender of the biological self to the digital stream. You are becoming a node in a network that never sleeps and never stays silent. If the machine can translate your intent for a friend in Tokyo, it can just as easily translate it for someone you never invited into your head. The same tech that lets Alex play a video game could turn your most private thoughts into a searchable database. Think back to our initial story. None of the police officers needed to ask you any questions. You are wearing a sleek headband, or perhaps you have a tiny chip tucked under your skull, and your silence has become completely irrelevant. In this situation, the right to remain silent is a ghost of a dead era. You can keep your mouth shut all you want, but your brain is screaming the facts in a language the machine already speaks. Our entire legal system is built on the idea that you own the contents of your mind and can't be forced to testify against yourself because your thoughts are considered private property. But once your neural data becomes readable, that property is up for grabs. If a court can subpoena your emails, why wouldn't they subpoena the electrical signal that created them? It covers crimes you already committed and the ones you haven't thought of yet. We are sliding toward a real-world version of Minority Report. But the authorities don't need a group of psychics in a pool to predict your next move. They just need your neural log. Many scholars already warn of a world where your political leanings or your hidden biases are pulled out of your head, like files from a rusted hard drive. You might think you're a loyal employee or a law-abiding citizen. But what happens if your brain data tells a different story to a hiring manager or a government agent? What was once a fortress has turned into a glass house. Your pre-intent is now public evidence. So, how do you fight back? Surprisingly, a 1995 sci-fi horror movie might have the answer. In Village of the Damned, Christopher Reeve plays a man trying to protect his mind from a group of children with terrifying psychic powers. They can see every thought and every fear. To hide the fact that he's carrying a bomb, he uses a mental trick. He focuses every ounce of his willpower on picturing a literal brick wall, building it brick by brick in his mind, staring at the grey mortar and the rough red surface, and using it as a shield to block the kids from seeing what lies behind it. It sounds like a desperate Hollywood trope, but it might be our only hope for so-called cognitive liberty. We may have to learn how to encrypt our own thoughts, or find a way to train our brains to generate noise or fake patterns to mask our intentions. Maybe Inception's subliminal firewall wasn't so far off. It's a rather strange thought experiment, isn't it? Try it right now. Think of a secret while simultaneously picturing a bright, neon yellow rubber duck. It's hard. Your brain wants to follow the path of least resistance. That means it wants to broadcast reality. In a world of neural surveillance, that rubber duck or that brick wall becomes your last line of defense. We are entering a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek where the seeker has X-ray vision. If you can't control what you broadcast, you don't actually own yourself anymore, and instead become a data set to be harvested and analyzed by whoever owns the hardware. The question is whether we can still think without being watched. As the technology gets faster and the chips get smaller, that brick wall in your mind is going to need to be built very, very thick. This is the transhumanist handshake. Accept it and the body finally reveals itself as a piece of hardware long overdue for a firmware update. For the pioneers of this tech, this is the final liberation. You are a super individual emerging from the static. Someone who can design a skyscraper with a passing thought, or speak a dozen languages through a digital filter without ever opening a textbook. You are stretching the edges of that old bag of skin into unrecognizable fluid shapes. There is a heavy price for admission, though. If your thoughts are data, and data is something that can be copied and shared, then what happens to you? If you can download a skill like in the Matrix or broadcast a feeling, the line between your soul and the server starts to evaporate into the cloud. You are becoming a node in a massive network. And while that sounds like a sleek sci-fi dream, it changes the very texture of how we experience reality. The funny thing is that non-duality teachers have tried for decades to tell us what we were too scared to hear. We spend our entire lives building brick walls to protect some precious internal self that we think is the center of everything. The mind feels like a cockpit with a pilot at the controls, and everyone assumes the vault contains a special occupant. Neuralink's sensors reveal a different reality altogether. It's more like a busy construction site where no foreman ever shows up to work. Look at the screen, and the electrical signals for hunger appear in real time. The pattern for the color blue flashes across the monitor, while the intent to move a hand shows up as a jagged spike of light. Yet the pilot remains missing. The eye at the center of the head functions as a clever story the brain tells itself to keep the chaos organized. No actual knower of the thoughts exists. They just happen. No user of the brain exists. The brain simply brains, like a heart beats or a lung breathes. Streaming those data points out of the skull destroys the comfortable illusion of the lonely individual. Think of it like this. Throughout all of human history, every single person who ever lived died with secrets. They had a world inside them that no one else ever saw, and that is the source of all art and mystery. But we are about to trade that mystery for efficiency. The depth of the vault gets exchanged for the speed of the broadcast. Close your eyes for a second. Try to hear that internal voice one last time. Notice that quiet space where you can say anything to yourself without judgment or consequence. Feel the weight of a secret. That heavy sensation in the center of your chest is what it feels like to be a traditional human. It is beautiful and lonely. It is a burden that the future is very eager to take away from you. The vault is opening. The only question left is whether you'll be the one holding the key, or if you'll just be the one standing inside when the lights come on. If you feel drawn to move beyond just understanding these pointers intellectually, if you want to truly see for yourself what you already are, we've put together a structured digital retreat to help guide that deeper unfolding. It's designed to gently take you from conceptual glimpses into a more direct, lived recognition of your true nature. We use clear, straightforward guidance combined with guided meditations that invite you to rest in what's already here. You can find the full retreat linked in the description below. And if you prefer to listen without any music or background sound, we now offer audio-only versions of the newest videos. They're available exclusively on Patreon. Check the description for all the details and how to access them.